I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, more absolute insanity out of the Olympia School District.
Condoms and dental dams will be available in the health room. The policy actually will read supporting breastfeeding, chest feeding employees.
Plus, why are some cities using taxpayer resources to oppose voter initiatives? Seems a little odd. And an important ruling by a Texas court when it comes to the rights of independent citizen journalists. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. I'm just laughing because the title of our show today says it all. Condoms, dental dams, and chest feeding. Yes, all of those things were packed into one Olympia School Board meeting, and that's not all. Man, sometimes I just think, are we spinning our wheels? You know, we aired this documentary, what has it been, a week and a half or so ago now, called Operation Indoctrination. It's available for free right now across all of our Undivided platforms if you'd like to check it out. Operation Indoctrination, a story of academic decline, and it focused on the Olympia School District, which I really believe is the wokest school district in the nation. So I thought, well, gosh, we're going to do this. And, we've had two parents on now after that to raise red flags about lessons already this year, like giving kids playing cards about banned books like Gender, Queer, and Two Boys Kissing in a fourth grade class starting the school year with a whole lesson plan on pronouns and gender identity. So anyway, they had the documentary has now come up in two different school board meetings, but there was a particular meeting happened a couple days ago, and it is shocking the amount of political and social indoctrination and stuff that they can fit into a single meeting. And keep in mind, I don't know if I'd be as aggressive about this stuff if test scores were through the roof and kids were succeeding and attendance was great, but it's not. It's not across the entire state's public school system. But in the Olympia School District, test scores aren't great. You're looking at like failing levels for math and English language and science. So here you've got academics declining, enrollment down. They've got to close some schools. It's happening in Seattle too because attendance or enrollment is down, attendance is down. So they're not getting the money. So they've got to close some schools, and they're focusing on the most insane stuff. So we're going to go through, just to give you an idea of how prevalent this really is, we're going to go through some of the insanity. Nicole gets an A+, and our friend Alicia Perkins, who with OSD Rescue, who, God bless her soul, monitors these school board meetings. It's just
all
insane.
her, man.
So one of the school board members who was featured in our documentary, she went on some anti-police rant when she was a candidate for school board. That was included in the documentary, but a lot of it focused on what's happening inside a classroom at Orla, the Olympia Regional Learning Academy, which is part of the Olympia School District. So Jess Turtelot-Palumbo, again, went on an anti-cop rant that we played in the documentary. She, in this meeting, just wanted to send some positive vibes to the staff at Orla.
It's been a really powerful week in terms of education. And I also just want to lift up Orla, the families, the staff, principal. I just wrapping you in a lot of care right now. And I just want to be very upfront about that, say that. So I appreciate you all so much. Bye. Or not bye, but I'm good for now. Thanks.
Don't laugh, Nicole. That is Olympia School Board member Jess Turtelot-Palumbo, clearly in reference to the negative attention that Orla has received because of our documentary. So, they don't think that there's any problems with what we presented, which is just it's mind-boggling. You know, it's not like we presented one example, two examples, three examples, four examples. We presented dozens of examples of really troublesome behavior. And as a school board, to ignore it entirely, act like we're the problem and, oh, we're just thinking about Orla in this time of need is insane to me. So now on to other business, right? Oh, they, you know, briefly referenced in some fashion the documentary. So let's focus on education, right? Nope. No, let's focus on making sure that high school kids have what they need to have sex.
Some other students and staff from OHS and I worked on getting point E added, which is having physical barrier and contraceptive devices available at all middle and high schools. So condoms and dental dams will be available in the health rooms because, well, one, sex ed is mandatory now at all high schools, I believe, by Washington state law. So, you know, having the actual tools to safeguard yourselves during sex, which is something high schoolers do, is important. So, safe sex is important.
Okay, I shouldn't laugh because she said, you know, high schoolers have sex. I agree. High schoolers have sex. They also said middle school.
Yes.
So you're going to have condoms and dental dams available for middle schoolers, you sick people. Like, okay, condom. If you don't know what a dental dam is, how can I say this without...
Do you really have to? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's what a woman would use if there were going to be mouth to, you know, or I mean, you know,
yeah,
guard against, you know, okay. So you're going to put that in a middle school? That's so weird and creepy. And she says in there that it's because, well, can you play that again, Nicole? I might cut it short, but can you play it again?
Some other students and staff from OHS and I worked on getting point E added, which is having physical barrier and contraceptive devices available at all middle and high schools. So condoms and dental dams will be available in the health rooms because, well, one, sex ed is mandatory now
right
at
there.
all.
Sex ed is mandatory. Putting condoms and dental dams in middle schools and high schools is not mandatory. So that has nothing to do with sexual education. I understand that condoms are part of sexual education at a certain level, but it's a whole nother thing entirely to put them, you're not their parents. You know, it's encouraging. And it is broaching the conversation about from middle schooler. It's like, what's this? Well, that's a dental dam. Let me explain to you what a dental dam is for. It's really wild stuff. It doesn't stop there. It's totally normalizing it. And you think, again, one of the things we talked about in the documentary is there was a sixth grade sex ed lesson, 6th or 7th grade sex ed lesson, and the teacher put all these things up on the board. It was like anal sex, abstinence was on the board, permanent sterilization. But then she talked a lot about anal sex and permanent sterilization to 7th graders as an option. Think about that. Permanent sterilization. And the students we spoke to in the documentary said that's what she talked about more than anything else. And she didn't actually go over abstinence. It was on the board, but that wasn't what she talked to kids about. She talked more about permanent sterilization and other forms of sex where you can't get pregnant. Wild stuff. Let's see. Also, there was a policy they wanted to make sure to talk about supporting pregnant persons when they go to feed their children via their chests.
I do just want to point out the supporting breastfeeding employees. There's no change from first reading, but just a reminder that the policy actually will read supporting breastfeeding, chest feeding employees.
Yeah, chest feeding employees. Okay, gotcha. So that's all in one meeting still. Let's keep going. So before I get to these next clips, I have to remind you of who Tana Reed is, also featured in our documentary. Tana Reed was a woman appointed to the school board to fill a vacancy. She ended up running for the school board for a permanent seat, but she didn't get it. So she is not on the school board right now, but she continues to show up to school board meetings. I'll get to that in a moment, but as a reminder, here's Tana Reed's greatest hits.
The police, both black women were murdered by the police. And it amazes me how those pigs can sit over there to watch us peacefully talk about what we want changed in this state. It amazes me. And they don't pay attention until we tear it up. So just before I get started, tear everything up in this city until they do what we want them to do. If I can't beat them, if I'm not going to join them, but I'm going to infiltrate, and I'm going to get in there, and I'm going to be a voice from the inside. They've deemed me a threat to security, and they need to. There are poor white people. There are marginalized groups that are not people of color. White folks, you had a 400-year head start. I do not feel sorry for you if you're poor. We need to tear for that. Town that is historically racist. I mean, that's the culture of the city. You guys are changing that, but we cannot change it until we actually infiltrate.
Yeah, so we thought, oh gosh, great. She didn't win her school board seat. So Tana Reed, who encourages rioting, who's clearly racist against white people, who said herself that she would be a security threat in the school, and then was like, while she was temporarily on the school board, put in charge of school security. Anyway, so she lost her race. So I thought, well, we're done with her, right? No, she has been routinely showing up to school board meetings, including this one where the chest feeding, condoms, dental dam conversation was happening. And she shows up at these meetings and sits there, and just as a member of the public, right, and preaches to the school board, the wokest school board perhaps in the entire country, about how racist they are.
How many conversations does a person have using the N-word that they don't know that they can't remember when they used it? Now, let me tell you why both of you should not be serving students and staff. You have caused me irreparable harm by calling me a liar, basically. I told the truth. And the two of you conspired to cause harm to a Black woman by co-signing the other's lies. There have been, I don't know how many families that have formally complained of racial discrimination or racial violence. And you all on this board have determined, have had to determine whether or not those incidents happened. How many times did you rule in favor of the families? 0. And Darcy saying that I'm using the race card makes me want to cuss, but I won't. Instead, I'll say resign now, please.
Thank you, Tana. Thank you for your service on the CAC and on the board.
Thank you for. So you have this Black woman who has said all these insane things that led to her not even being elected to such a crazy school board, despite, it's really progressive, but she took things a step too far. But she's coming back to these meetings regularly. They regularly give her additional time. So parents who show up, they have like a strict time limit, right, for their public testimony. Tana Reed shows up and accuses them of being racist and goes on these rants about how, and she's setting them up for a lawsuit. I don't know how she can't see that. She's setting them up. This all goes back to one of the school board meetings. One of the school board members was reading something that had the N-word in it, allegedly. But he was reading like a hateful message, and Tana Reed has used that. And now she's clearly setting them up for a lawsuit saying the school board is racist, and she's making that case by showing up, testifying as much. I mean, I give it a matter of weeks before she sues the school board for discrimination, saying the school's racist, most progressive school district in the freaking country, racist, all of this. And then, this is how crazy this is. Think about this. As a parent, they cut you out. They don't want to tell you things. They don't want to talk to you about lesson plans. They tell you that if you don't like the political and social agenda that they're pushing on your kids, that you can just leave the school district. But Tana Reed, this absolutely fringe activist who shows up and accuses them of being racist, she, not only does she get extra time, they took out of this meeting nearly 3 minutes. So a little background. So there's this transgender individual always comes to the meetings with Tana Reed and uses their time to praise her work and stuff. So asks the school board for a moment of silence for Tana Reed. Okay, hold on a second. Think about this. Woman, she has no business, she has no official business there. She's just a Black woman who says the school district has discriminated against her. And because they're so woke progressive and can't say no to insanity, the room sits in silence for Tana Reed for almost 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I am speaking tonight in support of former director Tana Reed. I'm here to uplift her voice and her words. I have no intention of rehashing or elaborating on what she said tonight, as she has been clear as crystal. Nor am I going to do the work to explain to you the obviousness of the harm she's holding you accountable for. I will say The work you think you've done so far on said harm is not enough. And with that, I'd like to leave the rest of my time as a moment of silence so you can take a couple more minutes to reflect on what she said earlier.
Literally, they all sit there in silence for the next 2 minutes and 30 seconds, completely acquiescing to this mob that's calling them the most progressive school board in the nation, probably racist. You can skip forward to the end, Nicole. I don't think I can do 2 minutes of silence. Are we almost done yet?
This is the final 10 seconds here.
Thank you, dear Lynn. Oh,
Thank you, dear Lynn.
Thank you so much for making us sit in silence and reflect on our racism. You guys, what are we going to do? This is insane stuff. We're going to work on some more follow-ups to what's happening in the Olympia School District. But again, it's not really just about like, oh, look at this crazy district and chest feeding and condoms and all this stuff. This stuff is sick. If I take it back to seriousness, this stuff is sick. It's detrimental to the education of kids, and that's why we care about it. Think about all the other actual academic discussions they could be having at this school board meeting rather than sitting in silence for 2.5 minutes for some woman who says they're racist, who's clearly building up a lawsuit, rather than making sure that the language and stuff says chest feeding and not breastfeeding, rather than talking about the need to put condoms and dental dams in middle school bathrooms. And they focus on all of that to the detriment of the education of students. And that is the problem. And it's not just happening in Olympia. It's happening across the state's public school system. It's why Chris Rakedal does not deserve a third term as the superintendent of public instruction. David Olson is the change that we need in order to get us back. He says his primary focus is a return to academic vigor. And if this doesn't show you why that is a clear and present need, man, I don't know what will. So we are going to continue our focus on the Olympia School District. And if you haven't checked out Operation Indoctrination, please watch it. You know, one of the other things that we're interested in diving into more recently when it comes to our state's education system is the clear anti-Semitic bend. You know, you look at what happened at the University of Washington, where you had Hamas sympathizers take over the quad, and the university did nothing about it because these were left-wingers. Had they been right-wing neo-Nazis taking over the quad, it would have lasted an hour. Governor Inslee never said anything about it. Bob Ferguson never said anything about it. And that's their alma mater. And it's because, again, this is left-wingers and they need them. That's part of their base. And you can't say no or push back against them. Had it been Trump supporters, 1 second, they would have had a joint press conference. And then while all of these protests were happening in and around the city of Seattle, really, they said pro-Palestine, but some of them were incredibly anti-Semitic. You had teachers who were confirmed as participants, like a teacher who was caught on camera up on Capitol Hill, graffitiing a old Starbucks building, a teacher who participated in the closure of I-5. So these are Seattle public school teachers. And then there was a story out, it's now made national news, as if our state's public education system needs any more national headlines. This from Como. Principal on leave after swastika comment sparks outrage at a Bellevue elementary school. So as a little background, there was apparently a swastika, graffitied on this elementary school in Bellevue. Rather than, I don't know, say that's horrible, we're cleaning it up and this isn't tolerated in our school district, the principal of that school is put out a statement essentially suggesting that, well, maybe there's another meaning to the swastika that we all ought to consider. Let me read the statement that she put out that now has her on leave. It says, in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and other ancient cultures, the swastika is a symbol of peace, prosperity, and good fortune. We recognize that for many of our families, this symbol has a positive and spiritual meaning. completely unrelated to the hateful associations it took on in more recent history. Yeah, because that's what the people meant. When you graffiti a swastika, you're definitely talking about peace and prosperity. She wrote, as a school committed to inclusivity and cultural understanding, we want to ensure that our students from all backgrounds feel welcomed, valued, and celebrated. We also want to make sure our community is educated about the diverse meanings and histories behind symbols like the swastika, so that we can all avoid misunderstandings that could inadvertently marginalize or hurt students. That is mental. That's Phantom Lake Elementary. And the principal's name is Nicole. Do you have it? Sorry, I want to make sure I name her. Okay, put it in there when you have it.
Yep, I'm working on it.
Phantom Lake Elementary. The principal basically says there's more meanings to the swastika, and we want to make sure everyone is understanding and appreciative of those different meanings. You really think if this had been put up there, before all the anti-Semitism on the left really kicked off in earnest, after the attack on Israel, every time, and we've talked about this on the show before, every time there was a swastika that was put up, on a Jewish building or somewhere, it was like during the Trump era, right? When Trump was in office, it was like Trump drives right-wing neo-Nazi hatred. Like, do you think that a teacher would have made an excuse, or a principal for that matter, would have made an excuse for a swastika that had been put on an elementary school while Trump was president? No, but now that it's all into this, the left-wing neo-Nazis or left-wing anti-Semitism is totally cool, you've got a principal who puts out a statement saying, we really ought to sit and consider whether this is about actually a symbol of peace and prosperity and good fortune. So I give the Bellevue School District a lot of credit. It's Heather Snookall of Phantom Lake Elementary, the principal there.
Which is funny because the Como article actually does not name her.
Yeah, I was looking for it. I was like, okay, yeah. I wonder why.
That's the New York Post that actually named her. So
Heather Snookall of Phantom Lake Elementary. So she's on leave. I think that's appropriate. That's an appropriate reaction to when your principal defends the swastika. They said that there was obviously some trust issues with parents. So parents had put out all sorts of statements and stuff. Let me see here. Bellevue School District Superintendent put out a statement. 4 weeks into the school year, we're off to a great start, blah, 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 blah. Wait, where is this? Sorry, Nicole. I'm having trouble finding these things. I thought it was all in here. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Is it in the Como article? I thought it was. Is it not?
What the superintendent said? Sorry.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
Oh, there is absolutely no place for hate in the Bellevue School District. In a time where words and symbols are used to divide us, we are working with administrators, staff, and students to call our community in for courageous conversations to affirm each other's culture, beliefs, and identities. We share the burden and pain that our Jewish families feel regarding the rise in anti-Semitism locally and across our country. Bellevue, like other districts, has seen a rise in anti-Semitic incidents, particularly this past year, and we're taking action to address it. Yeah, good luck with that when you have a principal who defends the Nazi swastika. Yeah, I'm sure you're taking action to address it. All right, coming up next, some absolute, utter stupidity when it comes to the Climate Commitment Act and efforts to stop it from being repealed. First, coming up this weekend, there are some appointments available if you'd like to go out to Natchez RV Resort and check it out. They have right now 12 extra large RV lots starting at just $89.9. And they also have these really beautiful turnkey park models if you don't have an RV, but you still want to enjoy everything that Natchez RV Resort has to offer, like their 4,300 square foot clubhouse, perfect for entertaining if you've got visitors, family, friends stopping by, indoor-outdoor fireplace, gourmet kitchen, and also a ton to do outside. On the grounds, they've got pickleball, tennis courts, there's a dog park, there's a playground, there's miles of recreational trails around there, and important to note, 300 days of sunshine. So if you want to get away from the insanity and also get away from the sad, gloomy weather that's about to overtake us, check out Natchez RV Resort, natchezrvresort.com, natchezrvresort.com. Schedule those private showings for this weekend, October 5th and 6th. Sorry. I was really holding that one in. All right, there's a couple of things happening with the initiatives, specifically the Climate Commitment Act, I want to point out today. There's quite a bit of things, so I'm going to try to get through what I can. First of all, I was alerted yesterday to the fact that some city councils are planning on holding votes to decide whether they want to come out in opposition to the initiative repealing the CCA. And I heard that, I said, there's no way. Why would a city council be able to use taxpayer resources to come out and take a stand against, or frankly, in favor of a voter initiative? That's weird. I mean, would you see a city council come out and say, hey, we're taking a vote so we can support Bob Ferguson or Dave Reichert in the race for governor? That's insane. So I just don't understand how this is allowed, but it's happening in Issaquah. In fact, on Monday, they have a public hearing because the council is considering opposing Initiative 2117 concerning carbon tax credit trading. It says the Issaquah City Council will hold a public hearing at its regular meeting on October 7th to consider opposing Washington State Initiative 2117. The initiative will appear before voters at the November 5th general election. And then it says the city council and public will have an approximately equal, what does that mean? The city council and public will have an approximately equal opportunity to express support or opposition. So I don't know what approximately equal means, but also you're saying this isn't even, you say it right there in the agenda for the meeting that you're considering opposing it. It's not like it says we're considering taking a stance on it one way or the other. We want to hear from the public. It's like, no, we're considering opposing it. But yeah, if you support it, like, we'll give you equal time. So you've already made up your mind. And if you hadn't already made up your mind, then you would have said, we are considering taking a stance on it. Come talk to us about what stance we should take as a city council. No, it's a very progressive council in Issaquah. And so they want to oppose the repeal of the Climate Commitment Act. So they're going to use your money and your time, your taxpayer resources, the power and influence of their offices to encourage people to vote against an initiative that's going to be on the ballot. How is that allowed? Nicole reached out to them this morning and said, is this appropriate? One, I'm assuming it's allowed because I don't know why else they would be doing it. I'm assuming they would have looked into whether they could do it because it's like kind of the proclamation thing, right? But is that really appropriate to use your office, your office that pays you with taxpayer funds and time set aside in a meeting to take a stance on a ballot measure, especially one that was put there by voters? That is incredibly inappropriate. I've heard of some other cities possibly doing this, so we're going to continue to follow up on that. No city council should be using its time and taxpayer resources to take a position for or against. I would feel the same way if there were a city council that were going to come out and take a position for the initiative, even though that's how I feel about it. Because there should be a clear line of separation between election issues and the business of a city or a county or a state government. Really wild stuff. Meanwhile, the no on the initiative side, way outspending the yes on initiative side, and they have a ton of money to be running ads. And not only very dishonest ads, but real head scratchers like this one.
In the ICU, I see patients suffering from asthma and lung disease. So the fact that Initiative 2117 would mean more toxic air pollution in Washington is unacceptable for my patients and their health. 2117 is a bad deal for Washington.
What? You have a doctor saying that if we repeal the carbon trading auctions, that people are going to have worse asthma, like you think it'll be the flip of a switch? And first of all, not only is it not going to be a flip of the switch, we have no way of knowing the impact the Climate Commitment Act is having on the environment, even in the long term, because supporters of it had to admit to the Seattle Times editorial board that they have no way of tracking it. Here's a clip.
How are you tracking it? You know, I mean, you preserve some forest land that captures carbon. People replace their gas furnaces with heat pumps. How are you keeping track of those kind of things?
Yeah, we don't have like a system yet that sort of tallies up all of the CO2 reductions from every investment that we make. Some of the investments are, we've invested in stronger air quality monitoring networks throughout the state. There's not going to be a direct greenhouse gas benefit from having more accurate information about what air quality is in South Tacoma, but it is something that our, elected members of the legislature think is important.
So not only do they admit, they have said, well, actually, we don't have a way to track the impact that this is possibly having on the environment. We just want you to believe that it's going to be good. But they also say that some of the things that the CCA is funding, which we already knew, but they don't actually reduce carbon in the environment. They're like air quality monitors, which doesn't do anything. It just tells you if the air is good or bad. And I'm sorry, we can see that on our cell phones. So not only like that ad saying, well, it's going to make my client's asthma worse, which is just, you can tell they have a lot of money when they put out ads like that. They're like, I don't know, just throw anything at the wall and see what sticks with people. So not only do the backers of the Climate Commitment Act who oppose the initiative to repeal it say, well, we're not actually tracking this stuff. So, you know, anyone who tells you it's going to have a positive impact on the environment or already is lying to you and making that up because there's no data out there. But Jonathan Lesser, we played this clip, I'll play it again, from Discovery Institute. They actually did the work to look into, okay, let's say the state meets all its goals, like not just the Climate Commitment Act continues, but the state's meeting all its emissions goals that it set for 2040, 2050. They actually looked at what the overall impact in the best case scenario would be to the global temperature.
Let's assume that an even better case, they can hit zero energy-related greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, not 2050, sooner, by 2040. How would that change world temperatures by the year 2100 when all the CO2 reductions kind of work their magic? And it turns out the answer is 3 1,000ths of 1 degree.
3 1,000ths of 1 degree to the global temperature. And that's everything. That's if we accomplish every goal we've set on the environment, which we know that some of those goals are total pipe dreams, that they're not even possible to achieve because we'd need like 30% of our land mass to be used for wind and solar plus offshore wind farms, which is never going to happen. So giving them every benefit of the doubt, 3 1,000ths of 1% impact on the global temperature. And for that possible benefit, you've got to make poor people poorer. You've got to make the middle class poorer. You've got to make the middle class pay more for gas, the middle class pay more for groceries, the middle class pay more for energy, the middle class come out of pocket $50,000 to $70,000 to electrify their homes for 3 1,000ths of a percent in the change to the global temperature? Yet you have these groups. Can you play the asthma ad again? Remember, 3 1,000ths of a percent, nothing in there that is going to meaningfully deal with the wildfire issue, for instance. In fact, they're sending some forests back to old growth, and old growth forests, because they want to save the trees, old growth forests sequester far less carbon and are far more likely to go up in flames. And you've got an asthma doctor who's saying this on TV?
In the ICU, I see patients suffering from asthma and lung disease. So the fact that Initiative 2117 would mean more toxic air pollution in Washington is unacceptable for my patients and their health. 2117 is a bad deal for Washington.
Holy smokes. There is no end to their dishonesty. And there was a press conference yesterday that proves that. So these tweets are from Fuse Washington, but the press conference was held by Defend Washington, which is the group opposed to all the initiatives. So this is crazy because it's like, we're going to lie to you, and then we're going to host a press conference accusing the other side of lying to you. And of course, the media is going to cover that press conference. So they make all these claims. Happening now, Defend Washington is holding a press conference exposing Brian Haywood's Let's Go Washington violations of our campaign finance laws and why they should face accountability for their deceptions. Tim O'Neill of Wacom Alliance says Brian and Let's Go Washington knows their only hope of passing these measures is to keep voters in the dark about their harmful impacts. Courtney Nomad, the director of Planned Parenthood, says without forceful action from the PDC, more bad actors will simply violate the law to take away our freedoms, like reproductive freedoms. Holy smokes, where do I even start? So they're accusing Brian Haywood of shady activity, of keeping voters in the dark, of lying to voters about the impacts of these initiatives. And they're even so desperate, because they'll lie about anything and they'll gaslight and fearmonger, that they bring abortion into it? Did I miss something? Do any of these initiatives have anything to do with abortion? No, not even close. They're on taxes and spending. None of them have anything to do with abortion, but the left knows, like, let's just talk about abortion. So they bring in the Planned Parenthood lady to say, well, gosh, if Brian Haywood gets away with these initiatives, then it's your reproductive freedoms that are at risk next. But what really gets me, and there is a PDC complaints fly like crazy in an election year. I mean, I've been the subject of PDC complaints. I'm not even running for anything. Anyone can file a PDC complaint. There's this ongoing one with Brian Haywood that essentially, with the 4 initiatives, they didn't properly explain what donations went to benefit which of the initiatives. It was all just sort of a collective group, which is like, okay, so you're concerned that he didn't do what? Good accounting? And so you think that he's being keeping voters in the dark about harmful impacts, that they're misleading voters, that they're bad actors. Meanwhile, so the media covers this, has not said anything about the many, many clear lies from the government, the many, many clear lies from politicians about things like the Climate Commitment Act has been built on lies. For instance, State Senator Marco Elias, he was out there right away when this initiative qualified for the ballot. Oh my gosh, if you pass Initiative 2117, we won't be able to maintain bridges. Our bridges will crumble. We won't be able to maintain roads. Oh, they'll be littered with potholes, as if they're not already. Which, of course, makes no sense because not a dime of CCA funding goes or takes from the existing transportation budget, which already there's money allotted to maintain bridges. Of course there is, and to maintain roads. He lied about that. Now we're seeing ads on TV with that exact sentiment. You've probably seen them. The ads were like, you hit a big pothole. Oh, if you repeal the CCA, there's going to be big potholes like this everywhere. There's the ad with the snail. The snail's moving faster than traffic. Oh, if you repeal the CCA, traffic will get even slower. It'll be slower than a snail. None of that's true. The most deception in this is coming from the side opposed to the initiatives. Of course, there's the OG deception. Governor Inslee saying, oh, this won't raise gas prices. Here's the clip.
At what point are you going to tell the people of Washington State that they're going to possibly see much higher gas prices next year because of the CO2 emissions tax?
Well, that's not true. They are not going to see much higher gas prices, maybe even lower than they are today. This is going to have minimal impact, if any, pennies. We're talking about pennies, potentially.
Yeah, it was like 50 pennies. So the CCA has always been built on lies. It's been the subject of lies when it comes to lawmakers and special interest groups who are desperate to keep it because they profit from it, not because it's going to help the environment, because we already know that even if they can achieve all their goals, it's like 0.03% in global climate. So it's not about actually the climate. And if it were about the climate, to the point of the supporter, Joe Fitzgibbon, in his Seattle Times editorial board interview, he admits that they didn't even put anything in place to track the improvements. So if it was really about, hey, we need to make sure that these things we're doing are having a positive impact on the environment, because if they're not, we need to do something else. They don't care. That's not actually the issue. The issue is how much money that they're able to dole out to their cronies and their allies, and then how much money they're able to make by creating a business after they get out of Olympia that deals with climate. That's exactly what it is. And then, the lies and deception, the bribes that they're paying you with your own money in energy credits. Oh, thanks to the Climate Commitment Act, you're going to get a $200 energy credit. Here you go, poor working class family. The government is oh so generous, except that's your money. That's your money they already took from you at the gas pump and at the grocery store and in energy costs. And you're paying, because of the Climate Commitment Act, far more than $200 a year. For the average family, it's about $600 a year. And it's only going to get worse because they're going to shrink those carbon auctions, and they're going to have fewer available carbon credits. And so all those costs, if we don't repeal this dang thing, are going to skyrocket. Look, again, I go back to, if there were a policy that were having a trackable, verifiable, genuine impact on the environment, I would be in favor of it personally. If it was a matter of a few extra pennies at the gas pump or whatever they promised it would be. That's not what this is. It's mind-boggling to me. They go out there, these progressive groups, they say, oh, it's the other side that's lying. It's Brian Haywood that's rich and shady and breaking the rules and lying to people. while their side is doing that times 10. And Brian Haywood, like, let's say he did lie. Let's say there was an example, and I don't think he ever has, but let's say there were examples, concrete examples that someone could give me. That's much different than the government lying to you. That's much different than the governor lying to you. Than the Department of Commerce pushing out bribes with your own money. Shouldn't we have higher expectations of the government? So they manufacture all these things about Brian Haywood. The media bites. There's all these hit pieces about Brian Haywood this. Oh, first he was a millionaire. Oh, and now he's a multimillionaire. Oh, now he's a billionaire. Like, the more desperate they get, the more rich Brian Haywood gets. And the media falls for it hook, line, and sinker. They buy into it because it aligns with their bias. And then over here, don't mind Bill Gates giving millions of dollars, Amazon giving a bunch of money, the Ballmers giving millions of dollars. Oh, that's not evil money. That because they're on the side of good money, bad money, good lies, bad lies, good deception, bad deception. It's insane. You can't fall for it. These people should be absolutely ashamed of themselves, but they're not. And they won't be ashamed of themselves until there are actual consequences for their actions at the ballot box. All right. I'm just depressed.
I know, it does get really exhausting. I just
ran out of breath.
Try to tell everybody.
I'm tired. I got home last night. My husband's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, No, I'm sad.
Exhausted.
I'm exhausted. People won't wake up.
Emotionally.
People just keep electing the same people who lie to them, who take all their money and make them poor. And I don't get it. I don't know what to do. All right. Speaking of horrible elected leaders, we're going to talk about a few coming up next in a double dose of unbelievable. Oh, I didn't have an ad in there. Yes, I do. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, everybody's like, Brandi's a mess this week. I am. If you're thinking about selling your home at any point this year, highly suggest you reaching out to our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com. Wes is just superior. He's just better at this than other real estate agents. He's been doing this for a long time. He knows how to navigate the ups and downs of the market. And there are things he offers to his client that you're simply not going to find anywhere else. We talked to retired Seattle police officer Mike Boggs, who utilized Wes's concierge service, could not believe how fast his home sold.
Wes came out and met with us, and we told him what our concerns were. He mentioned the concierge service, and we did take advantage of it. And it was, I think, the smartest thing we've ever done as far as selling a house. We sold in 6 days for a full asking price.
Oh, amazing.
It was really amazing, especially in, this isn't the greatest climate for house sales right now. And that's one of the concerns we had was we're, building a house. And so you have to kind of time this correctly so that you have the proceeds from the house that you're selling to put towards the house that you're going to be buying or building. And we actually put on the market a little sooner than we thought we needed to, and it sold so fast that it was this is fantastic.
Yeah, so Mike was off to Arizona. Good for him. Retires from SPD, got out of that disaster, and then moved to Arizona, so got out of this disaster. Although Arizona is worrying me more and more, but I digress. Anyway, check out our friend Wes Jones, sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, simply a better way to sell your home. What do you think, Nicole? Double dose of unbelievable?
Sure, let's do it.
You didn't really have a choice because I have it in there, and I'm going to do a double dose of unbelievable. Let's get to it. Boop. All right. Politicians think they're smarter than you, and don't take it from me, some of them are actually admitting it. So I've said that I think the initiative process is the first thing in peril. If Democrats achieve a supermajority in Olympia, they're going to find a way to get that done. They've already rendered our right to referendum completely obsolete, because what they do is they attach an emergency clause onto the end of bills that they know are so controversial that voters might seek to put them through a referendum. And you cannot referendum a bill that had an emergency clause attached to the end of it. So that's why they attach an emergency clause onto bills that aren't an emergency. So the referendum process is useless. So we just have the constitutionally protected process of the initiative. But Democrats have been attacking it aggressively, especially during this Let's Go Washington effort. So not a surprise that you have Democrats that come out and say, hey, I don't support these initiatives. I'm going to vote no on them. That was the case for Ryan Mello. So there was a candidate form in the race for Pierce County Executive. Ryan Mello, a progressive Seattle-type Democrat, is running against Kelly Chambers, a Republican who's currently a representative in the state legislature. So they were asked about their level of support for the 4 initiatives that voters will be voting on in November. Here's what Ryan Mello said.
Do you support or oppose the initiatives on the ballot this November? And how do you think they affect businesses?
Look, I oppose these initiatives because I don't particularly like making law based on initiative. It's not a way to have a lot of give and take, and I think the legislative process is a better process to make law.
I don't support making laws via initiative. I think the legislative process is a better process to make law. He thinks that lawmakers are smarter than you, that lawmakers can make better decisions for you than you can make for yourself. Which is interesting because there are some very progressive now laws in Washington that were won via the initiative process. I wonder if Ryan Mello doesn't support the gun control initiative that was passed a few years ago, that progressives were all excited about. I wonder if Ryan Mello, since he doesn't like the initiative process, has a problem with Washington state's abortion protections, which were passed via voter initiative. Or could it be more likely that Ryan Mello just doesn't like initiatives that are brought about by Republicans or that he doesn't agree with? But the initiatives he supports ideologically, those are fine. Of course, those are becoming more and more rare. Really, the only people who seek to use the initiative process these days are people who aren't happy with what's happening in Olympia. So those are naturally going to be Republicans and conservatives and maybe moderates who feel like they're completely left out of decision-making in Olympia, because they are. Because you have one party in power that's increasingly going to the left. They're pushing through basically any policy they want at this point. So they don't need an initiative process anymore. But it's the people who are in the minority who do. And Ryan Mello doesn't like that. Well, I don't like those people in the minority pushing back, gathering more than 1 million signatures to tell us in Olympia on our high tower, on our high horse, what we should be doing. I can't believe he actually said that. I cannot believe he actually said that. Nicole, can you play that clip one more time?
Do you support or oppose the initiatives on the ballot this November? And how do you think they affect businesses?
Look, I oppose these initiatives because I don't particularly like making law based on initiative. It's not a way to have a lot of give and take, and I think the legislative process is a better process to make law.
Yeah, and he gets into this whole waxing poetic about, we can be bipartisan. Actually, I got the second clip of it. Let's play it.
Making, you can make better law when you're able to hear from stakeholders, bring stakeholders together to really work through the many kinks and implementation steps that are identified in any law that you are trying to create. So I'm a person that really enjoys the bringing different people together who think.
Watch the look on Kelly's face here.
In order to work on tough challenges. I will not be supporting these initiatives. I don't think they are the right ways to move Washington forward. We need the revenues in one of the cases, especially to fund childcare and our K-12 education system and higher education, which is really significant to the future of our business community, to have a well-educated workforce for folks who are ready to roll their sleeves and work here in Pierce County and Washington State and be productive community members.
Kelly Chambers just smirking at the end because she knows. Did he really just say that? But I think it's interesting that he says, I don't support the initiatives. We can make better decisions through the legislative process. And then he says, because I really want to bring stakeholders in. Yeah, I really want to hear voices. I don't know, stakeholders like the voters? Are the voters? Do the voters not count as stakeholders? I mean, that's like the biggest stakeholder, right? They are the ultimate stakeholder, the people you serve. No, you just want your party to be able to push through its agenda completely unchecked, which is coming very, very close to being able to do if they reach supermajorities, veto-proof majorities, etc. And they'll just get rid of this initiative process that people like Ryan Mello dislike so much. Pierce County voters, I cannot imagine. You really want a Seattle-type progressive Democrat who says he doesn't want voters weighing in on bills at Olympia? You really want that to be your next Pierce County executive? Ryan Mello. Ryan, hell no. All right, let's get to a double dose of unbelievable. All right. So remember Bob Ferguson, one of the things he's campaigning on for governor is he says that he's been protecting communities from sexually violent predators. He has been making sure that these sexually violent predators, worst of the worst, deemed high risk of reoffending, that they stay put on McNeil Island where they belong. Except, as we now know, he's been, under his watch, they've been being released at an increasingly rapid rate. Before he took office as Attorney General, because it's the AG's office that's tasked with trying to petition to get people sent to McNeil and then fighting the petition when people want to be released from McNeil Island because they have a constitutional right to not live out the rest of their life on an island. But before he took office, there was like maybe 1 to 2 a year who would successfully petition for release. Well, now there's been like dozens a year successfully petitioning for release. So you have to ask yourself, is the AG's office intentionally just doing a very bad job of defending the people of the state of Washington and protecting us from these sexually violent predators? It sure seems like it. And case in point, there is a sexually violent predator right now in Washington who is on the loose because he got released from McNeil Island and he decided he was just going to cut off his ankle monitor, and now he's in the wind. His name is Damian Lee Blevins. The Department of Corrections is now looking for him. He's 33 years old. He was last seen Monday near King Street Station in Seattle before he removed his GPS ankle monitor. He is a resident of an LRA, which we've talked about on this show quite a bit, a less restrictive alternative. Those are the facilities that the parents in Enumclaw and Tenino were fighting back against, where you'd have these worst of the worst sex offenders, so bad they had to be put on an island, who would be released and sprung on a community, and they'd put them in one of these less restrictive settings. And what was the primary concern from Tenino residents? I mean, if it's less restrictive, are you monitoring these people? Are we safe from them? Well, Damien was in an LRA and all he had to do is cut off his ankle monitor, hit up King Street Station, and now he's in the breeze. So he was put on the Special Commitment Center on McNeil Island just in 2023. So he'd been convicted of second-degree assault. His conviction didn't have a sexual motivation, but the state argued that they believed that it was he was a sexual predator. And so they were able to petition to get him sent to McNeil Island in 2023, but he's only been there for a year, already got cut loose with an ankle monitor, cut it off, he's in the breeze. Bob Ferguson, is that someone who you've protected the state of Washington and the people you serve from? No, Damian Lee Blevins. I just checked with DOC. I just got an email back from the Department of Corrections because I wanted to see, hey, is this guy still at large? Blevins, they just told me a couple minutes ago, Blevins is still at large. So they're looking for him. Hope you're not the one that encounters him, but I hope they scoop him up. You think Bob Ferguson will petition to get him sent back to McNeil Island? Probably not, but he'll still run those campaign ads saying he's protecting communities from sexually violent predators. It's really quite unbelievable. All right, let's get to some national news, shall we? So obviously Hurricane Helene has been a huge story, and there's a lot of political wrinkles to that. I hate to make it political, but man, you know, Harris, Biden, they were really panned for their lack of a response there. And so after that, they started to notice, like now they're like showing up and holding meetings on camera and doing all these things because there was all this criticism. But there's a lot going on in Florida, in the Carolinas. Let's talk about it in our weekly segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, welcome back. I'm glad you're doing okay, but Hurricane Helene was pretty serious, pretty deadly.
Yeah, it was. It definitely hit Florida as a Category 4 as they predicted, and it definitely caused a lot of damage. And unfortunately, the area that it caused a lot of damage to in Florida has been hit by 3 hurricanes in the last 13 months. So it is people that are like still rebuilding from the last time a hurricane hit. So pretty sad.
Yeah, and the images out of North Carolina too. I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, like freeways turned into full-blown rivers, and it's just insane. So, the federal government has been criticized a bit for its response. And there's this Florida Republican lawmaker who isn't waiting for the federal government. He's like been going out on these rescue missions on his own.
Yeah, he has. So he is a representative out of Florida. He basically said the federal government, with all of its bureaucracy, just moves too slow for the pace in which emergencies and chaos move. So he's kind of known for this. He takes it into his own hands, uses his resources and his connections to get boots on the ground and really help people. And he teamed up with a couple helicopter companies to bring supplies and also airlift some people in need out of the area up there in the Carolinas.
Yeah, this is Rep. Corey Mills. It sounds like he's done this before. He said, this is from Fox, in addition to providing relief to Israelis after October 7th, he also provided support during Hurricanes Nicole and Ian in his own district and rescued 23 Americans, along with 59 mentally and physically disabled children in Haiti. He also conducted one of the first successful overland rescues during the Afghanistan withdrawal, totaling around 2 to 3 dozen rescues in that region in 2021. Like, this guy is awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. He says that his direct quote from him is, we're not defined by the federal government. We're defined by we the people, and that it makes sense that Americans come together in times of great grief and strife.
Yeah, that's insane. So one other story that's not Hurricane Helene related. We've talked about this on the show when it was passed. Florida passed a ban on public camping. It sounds like that's now going into effect.
Yeah, as of October 1st, you cannot sleep outside in public areas. And that includes tents, sleeping bags, all that stuff. Like, just because you're hidden away doesn't mean that means you're not outside. So counties and cities are required to offer shelter for homeless people. Yeah. They are not allowed to use drugs in these shelters, but they are going to be offered assistance for substance abuse and mental health treatment while they are in these shelters. And people, like the public, can actually sue and hold the city and municipalities accountable if they don't do this for homeless people.
Yeah, this is what needs to happen, right? This is perfect. You're not saying you can't stay here and we're not going to give you anywhere to stay. So you've got to offer that shelter. If they don't take it, they can't just continue to camp and move from place to place. Can't use drugs in the shelters. Like, can't use drugs. And you're going to be given substance abuse treatment and mental health treatment in there. That makes a lot of sense. The lawsuit aspect of this is interesting because, look, I agree with this because we have so many businesses and residents who are just at the mercy of the government in our state who won't do anything about the homeless crisis. So you've got someone like camping in your doorway as a business in the alcove. The government's not doing anything about it. I do think you should be able to sue. So,
absolutely, especially 100%. As like if you're paying taxes into that city, state, the country in general, you should be able to hold people accountable. So I think pressure coming from all angles I hope that it makes a big difference. I hope that it's successful. And I just, I guess the next few months we'll know a little bit more about how well that's going. But yeah, I think that Florida already has a pretty tight grip on homelessness to a certain extent, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when they really start pulling people off the streets in a real way.
Yeah, it was amazing for me to be in a place like Miami where, the weather is so beautiful. You got all these beaches and stuff, and you would think there'd be a big homeless population, but there's really not. I mean, there's obviously some, but it wasn't the extent to what we see here. And it sounds like the law you can't like sue right away, but if they have an encampment and nothing's been done about it for 3 months, then you can file a lawsuit. So that puts a timeline on it for the government. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this works in Florida. I don't know if we have the political will to pass something like that here. We've had cities that have instituted these no camping ordinances, but it's a question of like the whole, you can't use drugs in the shelter and all of this. So if you move them into somewhere, are you doing anything to better their lives? So, all right, Miranda, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
it's not even controversial anymore. It is controversial. A lot of things that are controversial in Florida, but that's all right. I'm never changing that intro. All right, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll, shall we? Since these initiatives are so under attack right now, the amount of money going to defeat them is absolutely insane. I asked you guys in our subscriber poll on Patreon, Locals, and X, which initiative outcome does your family personally have the most at stake in? So, of course, we've got the 2066, which will stop the natural gas ban, 2109, repeal the capital gains tax, 2117, which would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, and 2124, which will make the long-term care tax optional. Right now, 60% on Patreon saying repealing the CCA, which makes sense, right? Because everybody's paying gas, you're paying more for food, etc. Bloom Kitty says, I like that, Bloom Kitty, repealing the CCA is most important, but the natural gas ban would be terrible too. Just that the CCA takes money out of my pocket daily. However, my elderly parents and I have weathered many power outages because of gas ranges and fireplaces to cook and heat our homes. So that's a close second. The lack of care for people just trying to survive, let alone thrive, is stunning. Yeah, the gas thing. So if a gas ban happens, I mean, the cost of that will far outweigh any cost of increased gas and groceries. I mean, maybe not over time, but if you're talking about $50,000 out of pocket like that to electrify your home, man, it's just not feasible for, I would argue, most families in Washington. Michelle Hills, really all of them will have a huge impact on our family. I chose 2066 because it would impact us upfront right away, the natural gas ban. This is good for me to know because I think it tells us, like, gosh, with the limited time we have, what do we need to be fighting for the most? E says, none of them directly affect me. The fact is, the more we give up our choices, our rights, our money, the closer we come to a dictatorship. Vote yes, pay less, and keep your choices. Yeah, I agree. David Sprinkle says, what a great poll question. Well, thank you. I came up with it all on my own. I chose the natural gas ban since most of my appliances are propane, but the long-term care tax is a close second. I will be paying the tax for about 3 years before I retire, and since I'm not contributing the requisite 10 years, I will not be eligible. It is nothing but an SEIU contribution, 100%, and that is ridiculous. It's one of the problems with it. It's like they're taking money from people who will never, ever be able to benefit from it. It's absolutely criminal. Weiss Castle on Locals says, I'm going to vote yes on all of them, but energy poverty is a very real danger. Yep. Todd Brisky, most of these are just taxes that will cause us to bleed more money over a period of time, but a natural gas ban would be devastating, would be a devastating amount of money all at once and would make us far less resilient. Oh, there's so many good comments on this today. Let me fit in one from X. Reagan says, I'm assuming this is asking which one we most hope passes. If so, for me, it's the CCA being repealed. It will lower gas prices, which will also lower the cost of other goods in Washington. I'm going to go through and read all your comments on this after the show, obviously to myself, because I'm just really curious sort of where your guys' minds are at with all these initiatives. So I thank you for your thoughtful responses. If you'd like to be part of our daily subscriber show polls, you just have to become a subscriber on Patreon, Locals, or X. Okay, we haven't talked about this a lot yet, although we should do a little more coverage as it drags on. So longshore workers are on strike. And the question is, of course, when this happens, depending on how long it lasts, what might happen. This from Newsday. The U.S. could see shortages and higher retail prices if a dock workers strike drags on. Obviously, we're a major port hub here and across, Washington and the West Coast. So there is a real concern, right? This is how goods come in and out of the country. But on the flip side, if you give in to the demands of the dock workers and their pay increases significantly, that could also have an impact on the economy. So we asked our friend Zach Abraham with Bulwark Capital to weigh in. This is from CNBC. Tell me if this rings true to you. It says, if the union prevails in its battle for a large wage increase, there's a risk of a resumption of wage inflation that could upset the Fed's so far successful efforts to tame inflation. Though recent Fed concern has focused more on a potential labor slowdown than boom conditions. So if the ILA succeeds in getting some massive wage increase for its employees, could that really on its own resume wage inflation?
Not on its own, but I mean, this is why I think the Fed is so short-sighted and so historically illiterate, meaning show me another bout of inflation that the Fed didn't previously think they had beat to, right? If you go back to the 70s, remember, was it who was the candidate that had the whip inflation now bust, because
I wasn't even alive in the 70s, Zach.
Like, Like, so, you know, I mean, there were so many different times where not just in our country, in other cultures as well, where the politics, well, we got inflation whipped. Well, okay, so, but there's other pressures, right? There's other things that are building up. And when you're a government, when you get to the point where economic outcomes become policy, meaning you're not telling everybody that you're going to give them a fair shake, you're going to guarantee outcomes.
Yeah.
That's an inflationary backdrop, right? Nobody loses. So there's no destruction of capital. There's no creative destruction. There's none of this kind of stuff. And so what are people going to want? They're going to want higher wage increases. Yeah. So I mean, this whole thing to me is so short-sighted and so silly because, yeah, I don't think inflation's going anywhere. I don't think it's dead. I think it's doing what it always does, which tricks you. And just when they think it's safe again to go in there and cut rates, stuff like this happens. And what they're saying, I think it would take more than just that. But what they're saying, the ports are a perfect example. And they're a perfect example of taxes. They're a perfect example of everything that we as consumers should care about. Because at the end of the day, if they get that raise, that will be passed directly and immediately on to the U.S. consumer, right? It's like, we're going to raise taxes on corporations. Great. That's inflationary too. You're going to make the price of goods go up. You know, so it's, I just wish people would understand that, right? The billionaires aren't going to pay that. You are.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why they're billionaires.
All right, Zach, good stuff. Well, we appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me. Fun as always.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. But I think one of the points Zach is making, and really about a lot of stuff happening, is, you know, people in power, they don't care about budgets. They don't care about deficits. If there's something that's hurting the economy, they're just going to create money, print money, write checks, whatever they have to do to make it temporarily better. And Lord only knows when that house of cards is going to come down. But we'll monitor the longshoreman strike. In the meantime, if you want to hear more about economic issues, Zach's your guy. He hosts a weekly radio show. You can listen to it, knowyourriskradio.com. He's also the chief investment officer at Bulwark Capital. They specialize in risk management. So right now, if you're worried about the risk associated with your retirement portfolio, given the state of things, highly recommend reaching out to Zach and his team. KnowYourRiskRadio.com, and you can get a copy of their free common sense investing guide by going to KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Okay, we've got a great sanity check for you today that I think is very relevant to our friend Jonathan Cho. In a good way. First, let's get to some questions and comments. Jerry Oaksmith, we missed your super chat that came in right on the tail end of the show yesterday. Thank you for that. Says, I knocked on doors for Dave in Tacoma. I ended up loving it. Oh, good. See, Nicole, you could love it too. So we've got these big days of volunteerism that we're pushing out. The first one is going to be October 11th in Marysville. So I want every single one of you to come and to either, if knocking on doors really you don't think is your thing, you can wave a sign. There's a million other things you can do, but we're going to be out there having fun for 3 hours. I hope it's not raining.
Oh,
think of that.
Don't jinx us.
Greg O'Lake is, wow, this Tana Reed lady is way off her rocker. How is she not being closely monitored by a mental health professional? Careful, Greg. I said someone seemed mentally ill on the show the other day. Now the stranger's doing a story about me. How can you? It's really irresponsible to say someone's mentally ill. Yeah, based on, it was the teacher who goes by the drag name Jack King Goff. Mm-hmm. Based on the video I saw, I stand by my statement. Mugshot Espresso, need to start asking state reps about this, and if it is acceptable, my God, someone needs to grow a spine. Yeah. I mean, if the media was doing its job, they would get lawmakers on the record about these issues. They would get lawmakers on the record about boys getting to compete against girls. But they're so ideological, they don't want to be the ones to bring it up. Because if you ask a question about it, then the far left will be like, oh, that journalist must hate transgender people, or that journalist, and journalists, like, a lot of them don't want to take that heat. They don't want the heat. They don't want the smoke. I want the smoke. I want the heat.
The Strangers piece just posted.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. So we'll have fun with that later.
Okay. Oh, is it good? Is it like Brandi's right? Hey, while I'm reading comments, look and see if they published the line I dared them to publish. Yeah. I responded to the stranger. I said, dare you to publish this. Because, you know, a little bit of like reverse psychology. So we'll see. Let me see here. Baron of Gray Matter, $5 super chat. Nazi is lefty. Its name is National Socialist. Read history. Vote yes. Pay less. Go Dave. Vote smarter. Washington. Captain Cranky Pants. Time to dump the tea into the harbor again. We're getting awful close. Sergeant Pickles, $4.99 super chat. Just getting home from an 8-state road trip. Hard to see what free states look like. And then come home to this mess. Yeah. Leftist tactic with a super chat. Saul Alinsky 101. Accuse your opponent of what only you are doing as you are doing it to create confusion, cloud the issue, and inoculate voters against any evidence of your guilt. That's exactly what they're doing. Accuse your opponent of doing what you're doing while you're doing it. The most insane gaslighting from the left on these things. This was interesting. So we played the crazy political ad of the doctor saying, if you repeal the CCA, my clients won't be able to breathe. And H looked him up. Thank you, H. Dr. Vin Gupta is his name. And he's a shock of the century. He's a medical analyst for MSNBC. Great. He's also faculty at UW. He's an analyst for MSNBC. Works with Amazon Pharmacy, or maybe did at some point.
I believe he still does.
Just tweeted out, one of America's most important laws to protect the planet and our health is under risk of repeal in Washington state. I'm proud to use my voice to stand up for what's right. Enough of special interests harming the health of our patients. What special interests are you talking about? The special interests who are donating millions of dollars to block the initiative? Vote no on 2117. Don't vote no. Vote yes. Pay less. What's the damage with that Stranger article?
You know, it's pretty funny. Really quick on that topic.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson on consuming media, because every article or every ad I see, I look up the doctors and I looked up the teachers, and there's always a connection to some special interest.
Oh, 100%.
And then, you know, to the contrary, I've seen Dave ads on social media and things like that. And they're regular people that we see at events all the time, and that like are very passionate about these issues, that are just normal people that want to do something for their community and really are passionate about Dave getting into office. And so I think the differences between those and kind of consuming that media, learning how to consume things like that, it's a good lesson.
100%. So anyway, we'll talk about this Stranger story, but since it just posted.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. So too funny. So basically, if you're not familiar with the story, we get these tips from parents in the Peninsula School District that one of their high school teachers, I think is a transgender man.
A girl to a boy,
I think. Kelsey Wayne had been moonlighting as a drag king named Jack King Goff, labeled themselves on public-facing social media profiles as the orgasmic drag king, posted something about lock up your daughters, which for any parent who has a daughter at a high school where they're teaching, that's really creepy stuff. So this all comes out. Kay Wayne ends up going on leave. We said on the show we weren't sure whether like he decided to go on leave or the school did, but there was clearly some sort of like not in the classroom anymore. So anyway, the Stranger sends us this list of questions like, oh, lock up your daughters is a rock and roll cliche. That's all that he meant. Did you know that? I'm like, no, and I don't care. And then basically accused us of bullying. It was did you reach out to them even for comment? It's like, well, they locked down all their social media profiles. We reached out to the school. Anyway, so they kept trying to justify a school teacher. In these questions, we're clearly trying to justify a high school teacher having a drag persona called Jack King Goff, the orgasmic drag king, that students had seen online posting, lock up your daughters. And anyway, one of the quotes, the Stranger had asked me, like, don't you think you needed the full context of this story in order to do it? And I said, this is the quote, and they printed it.
They did.
Because I was like, I'm totally right. I said, I don't need the full context of a high school teacher posting lock up your daughters under their persona as an orgasmic drag king named Jack King Goff. Completely inappropriate. If the Stranger wants to normalize this sort of bizarre behavior, you're going to set gay rights back 20 years. I dare you to print that because a lot of your readers will agree. They did, and they said, bravely, we persisted and did not heed the warnings of noted LGBTQ plus expert and ally, Brandi Kruse. I am an LGBTQ, I am an LGBTQ plus ally in the sense that I believe every adult human should be able to live their life as they see fit. I am a noted participant of many a pride parade, and I have witnessed many a drag show, and I tend to like them. But no, I'm not going to normalize the behavior. I don't care that she's trans, or he's trans. I don't care. She's trans. I don't care that she's trans. I said on the show, I don't even care that this teacher's a drag king in their free time. Because there are a lot of drag shows I've seen and drag kings and queens who don't have sexually explicit, suggestive performances in the slightest. This is not that. It's the combination of calling yourself Jack King Goff, the orgasmic drag king, posting "lock up your daughters" when you teach high school girls. That seems a little off, don't you think? So yeah, I don't need the full context of that. You don't do it. You're supposed to be a role model. If you're going to do a better job of hiding it from parents and kids. So wow, good job, stranger. And I guarantee there's going to be comments from the gay community on that saying, no, she's right. You're going to set gay rights back 20 years if you continue to prop up this sort of behavior as rational and normal. Wonder how many articles a stranger has done on me. Many. All right, with that, let's get to our closing sanity check, shall we? All right, so it's been maybe about a year and a half since our friend Jonathan Cho went independent after getting fired from Como TV, works for Discovery Institute, does all this guerrilla reporting. He started to get not only just blocked, kicked out from government press conferences, but physically prevented from entering press conferences, especially by King County and King County Executive Dow Constantine and his staff. Here's a clip.
I work for Discovery Institute.
Which is an advocacy group.
Well, we have a media wing called FixHomelessness.org.
Not a media wing.
Okay.
These are broadcast journalists, independent journalists. They work for media groups, not... Jonathan, you are not allowed in there.
I'm going to go as... I don't understand why I'm not being allowed to go in.
You're not a member of the media, Jonathan.
So I'm not being allowed to go in?
Nope. No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. So King County and Dow Constantine officially doesn't consider me a media.
Executive Constantine, I have a couple questions related to public safety. So basically,
Sorry, we'll take any other questions offline. Thank you very much.
Follow up with you.
Mr. Constantine, I'm
follow up with
asking
you.
a question about the Chinatown International District. Why are you ignoring me? The vast majority of Chinatown had a rally in Hinghey Park this past weekend, accused you of being racist against the Asian American community. Would you put a temporary moratorium on this project?
I'm glad to have Leo come talk to you about this.
How about you? When are you going to face the Chinatown community?
I'm in the Chinatown community continuously, but...
So why not put a moratorium on this before public input?
You're not actually a journalist. You were fired for promoting the Proud Boys. So we talk with reporters like those in the room, and we're not...
So you're not talking to me anymore and accuse me of promoting the Proud Boys. You're an elected official.
Yeah, you're not actually a journalist. Dow Constantine, as I said at the time, doesn't get to decide who the journalists are. I really think Jonathan Cho would have had a strong case had he sued over him being blocked from attending a press conference other members of the media were allowed to attend of a taxpayer-funded facility. And a court in Texas has actually made a ruling that's very similar to what happened and has happened to Jonathan Cho. And I think it's actually on the flip side. I think roles are reversed. So I think it was a conservative sheriff, and I might be wrong, but that was my interpretation of it. Conservative sheriff who refused to allow a Texas citizen journalist into a press conference because he wasn't, quote unquote, the media. Straight Arrow News now reporting that a Texas court has ruled on the side of that citizen journalist, saying he can turn around and sue that sheriff.
A Texas court has ruled a citizen journalist can sue a county sheriff after getting shut out of a press conference while being told he wasn't the local media. Justin Pulliam has an investigative YouTube channel called Corruption Report. His page is described as confronting tyranny to protect our individual rights and improve the human condition. In July 2021, Pulliam went to a public park to cover a statement from Fort Bend County Sheriff Eric Fagan after human remains were found there. That's when the sheriff approached Pulliam and told him to leave.
So where should we park? On the road? On the park market road?
Any place you can find a legal parking spot, that's where you can park at.
That is, Sheriff. That is.
Go ahead and start walking that direction.
After that interaction, Sheriff Fagan told a deputy to keep Pulliam away from the scene and said to arrest him if he didn't comply.
If you were not media, so at the sheriff's request, could you step back this way with us, please? You're more than happy to film from right here. If you just stay back here, that'd be great. Okay, sir? All right? I appreciate you.
You're a joke. You're a joke, man. So I can be right here?
Okay, you won't tell me. This is the game. It comes straight from the top, guys. Straight from the top.
The court found that Pulliam's free speech rights were violated in the incident. Pulliam provided this statement to Straight Arrow News. Quote, "This victory shows how important the First Amendment is to protect independent reporters like me who use social media to provide unseen, often critical coverage of the police. Shooting the messenger is no longer an option when they don't like how they look online."
Love it. Very, very similar to what happened. I mean, to the verbiage, to the actions. Hey, you're not media. You're not a journalist. You can't come in. Leave and stand over there. Very similar. This is great for us. I think it's great for Jonathan Cho. I think if there were to be actions like that against this increasing concentration of independent journalists who are doing important work to inform the public, that the outcome could very well be a successful lawsuit. That has been your sanity check for today. Are we done with live shows for the week?
I guess so.
What a bummer, man.
Wow,
I had
went fast.
fun. That went fast. All right. As usual, we got a great episode of Sundays with Subscribers for you coming up. If you'd like to support our show, please do. I always say it's just $5 a month because I think if I say it in a higher pitched voice, like, doesn't that sound less expensive?
Oh, absolutely.
It's just $5 a month to support our show.
Sounds little.
I have lost my mind.
It's tiny.
Yeah, it's just $5
tiny.
a month. It's just $5 a month to support our show on undividedpod.com. undividedpod.com. We sure would appreciate it. And we appreciate every single one of you. We had to reschedule our monthly live Q&A for subscribers from last night. It's happening tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific time. So if you'd like to join, now's a great time to subscribe. You can ask me any question in the world you'd like. We always have a good time. Again, 8 p.m. tonight, Pacific time, on our subscription platforms. That's it. Okay, subscribers, I'll see you tonight and on Sunday. And the rest of you, I'll just have to see you on Monday. Farewell. Toodaloo. Goodbye.
Ta-ta for now.
Adios. That's Spanish for goodbye.
Thanks for that. Wasn't positive.
I don't know any other languages. That's it. Okay, farewell.